Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal, the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, hospitalizations spike in early outstates as we pass 14 days from the Memorial Day threshold. Meanwhile, lawmakers, courts begin to implement reform as cops continue to help illustrate Black Lives Matter's point. Republicans ring the alarm bell for November, and they're still holding out for the day Donald J. Trump finally becomes president. Democrats seek a probe of violence at Lafayette Square. I say look in the mirror and call one. Primaries in multiple states last night. Georgia shows why it was subject to the Voting Rights Act pre-clearance provision. New York lawmakers repeal the law that protects cops' disciplinary records. The House Judiciary Committee holds hearings on police violence today. And the country with the third highest COVID deaths in the world, Brazil, restores its coronavirus data by court order. Lastly, new report, Chauvin and Floyd had run-ins at the club they had worked at together. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Excuse me. My voice is really bad. I had no idea what, I guess I hadn't even been talking that much. I got woken up very, very early this morning by my son, and I told him he could not watch an episode of television. And so therefore, he decided to punish me by not allowing me to sleep in at all. So
you can't have an sleep.
What's that?
You're not allowed an episode of sleep.
That's correct. If he can't watch, I've turned him on to Phineas and Ferb now. And so now he's like, when I don't let him watch TV, he's like, well, it's your fault because you knew I'd like Phineas and Ferb. And now you're not letting me watch it, which is a decent argument, I guess. Thanks for joining us. Michael is here. It is not Jeremiah Johnson, but in fact, it's Michael Brooks. Do you even know that reference?
No, but I'm assuming it's some type of like, Union General or something. I don't know.
No.
Western guy, right?
It was a, I think it's a fictional character, but played by Robert Redford.
Dude with a big beard.
Yeah.
Oh, is that where that
goes up into the mountains?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, sure. If the mountains is quarantine.
Well, I mean,
in Brooklyn,
he doesn't see any people. So there you go.
Oh, that sounds great. So by the way, I just want to say, I agree with your son.
About the Phineas and Ferb thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Thanks for joining us, folks. Glad you can make it. We've got a decent amount of news today. We'll take some calls early as well. Hopefully my voice will hold up. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to go a short show today.
How long has your voice been bothering you?
This is new.
This is new. You're discovering this just now.
Yep.
During the intro.
Yeah.
During the intro. Oy.
I thought it was fine before, but now I don't know what's going on. The Republicans are freaking out right now, and we'll get to the primaries. There was not great news for progressives in the primaries. There was some decent news, but not great news. But, it wasn't necessarily the most of progressive states, as it were. But we will get to that. Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be really starting to freak out a little bit in terms of November. And you can see it in multiple ways, not the least of which is that the Republicans feel like they have to address now. And I want to make this very clear. Nothing we're going to get from the democratically controlled Congress, House, or the Republican controlled Senate is going to be sufficient, I think, for what needs to happen, even at a federal level, right? Because most of this has to happen at a local level. But there is movement, which is surprising, not just obviously coming from the Democrats in the House, but Republicans in the Senate, which I think is indication of just they understand where public sentiment is. And Donald Trump is freaking out about this because he was really counting on a big black vote for him in November. And I'm not really actually being facetious.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is, counting on chipping off a couple of points of the black vote. I mean, clearly, that was in all their ads. I mean, that's the plan.
That seems to be out the window a little bit, and I think it's freaked them out.
I would say so. I think the ads were sort of undermined by the gassing of the protesters.
Yeah, I think that may have, and just things like, George Floyd is looking down upon us, and he's very excited about these unemployment numbers. I suspect that was probably not met in I don't know. I don't know in what possible community. Maybe Larry Kudlow was like the only person who was like,
yeah, George Floyd could be more excited.
And just the next thing we're going to see is presumably, we're going to see, or I should say, the Republicans believe that this defund the police is going to be, or is a little bit of a toehold for them. That the idea is that they can sort of convince people that the police are the victims here in some way, and that the idea of defunding just goes too far. This is what they're going to attempt to do. I just don't think it's going to work. I think we've hit a critical mass on some level where the right-wing narratives are just not going to gain traction in the way that they have in the past. And I think there's, several unique reasons for it. In addition to obviously, what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, you start having people protesting police violence and they are met with police violence. There's not a lot of arguments that you need to make at that point. Here is Sean Hannity. And they are, you can just watch Fox News to find out how sort of like lost they are in terms of what the narrative should be here. And here is Sean Hannity. He wants to make it absolutely clear. He's not making any comparisons between the way George Floyd was treated and the way Donald Trump was treated. But he wants you to see that there is a comparison.
He exposed how corrupt, high-ranking law enforcement officials tried to rig an election and destroy Donald Trump at all costs, to overturn an election. Even the president himself, it's not the same thing as what happened to George Floyd, but it's horrific. He was a victim of crooked cops. Now, again, not the same circumstances. I'm not making any comparison. A bad cop is a bad cop. And by all means, by the way, the damage was real to the country. The damage in Minneapolis is real to the country. And that the case, what was done in George Floyd case, should never happen.
Yeah. Don't make a comparison. Just bring me up in the same context. Thanks, Sean.
I gotta think that as far as like if you were to go to school and get a PhD in not making comparisons, or I should say in making comparisons, that would be the way that you would do it. I mean, just saying I'm not making a comparison But on one hand, you have this, and on the other hand, you have that. I'm not making a comparison, but look at these two things.
I'm not making He even goes down. I'm not making comparison, but look at them. I'm not making comparison, but they're both bad for the country. I'm not making a comparison, but bad things are bad things. I mean, he made actually almost 3 discrete comparisons.
In fact, at one point, he gets confused about what he's talking about was bad for the country.
Yes.
He was trying to intertwine them so much.
Yes.
Listen, the way that George Trump has been treated is not a comparison to the way that Donald Floyd was treated.
Derek, Robert Mueller was my Derek Chauvin.
I'm not making a comparison, but Nelson Mandela is all I'll say.
Comey and I also butted heads.
Yes.
Chauvin, Comey, dirty cop's a dirty cop.
The level of desperation that they're into right now, as they see so much of their project being threatened. I don't think that we are really at the point where their project is as threatened as they I think are indicating, but it's nice to see at least a little bit.
George Floyd and I were stablemates.
We will get into some of the the reforms that we're seeing both from lawmakers and from the courts. There was an interesting decision handed down yesterday in terms of a civil case against some police. We will get to that in a moment. Just want to let you know that today the show is in part sponsored by an app called Blinkist. I've told you about Blinkist before. We've got mixed up routines right now. Sometimes we have kids in the house constantly screaming. I don't know if you could hear that in the background, but freaking out. Still, you maybe want a little opportunity to learn something, to check out, to stay up informed on the latest stuff that's being written. Well, Blinkist is unique and powerful. It works on your phone, works on your tablet, works on your web browser. It takes the key insights from over 3,000 nonfiction bestsellers in over 27 categories. It condenses them down into what they call blinks, which you can read or listen to in just 15 minutes. And now Blinkist is also offering exclusive original podcasts from top authors and creative thinkers. You can also dive deeper into full-length nonfiction audiobooks at a special discounted price. Over 14 million people use Blinkist to deepen their knowledge of topics spanning from self-improvement, management, business, happiness, politics, history. For me, this is great. I've told you many times before what I like about Blinkist, and it's basically there are books that I don't have time to read, that I wouldn't be interested in reading. This is what the thing for me about Blinkist is that it drops the threshold of how interested I have to be in a book to actually check it out. That's basically it. I'm not making any point here with this, but with that said, I read the Blink, if you will, of Blowout by Rachel Maddow. I mean, it's just not one that, and I found it interesting, the book, insofar as like a lot of information about basically about oil and about petro economies, and I'm not quite as enamored with some of the solutions, but this is exactly why Blinkist is perfect for something like this. It's not a book I necessarily would have picked up and read, but now I've read it, or at least I've got the key takeaways. I'm looking at this too. I want to do Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Has anybody read that?
Ooh, no,
I feel
it
like
sounds great.
That, but right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. You go to Blinkist.com/Majority Report. You get a 7-day free trial, and then you get 25% off a premium membership and up to 65% off of audiobooks, yours to keep forever. Matt, that's 25% off a Blinkist premium membership, and it's Blinkist, Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Majority Report. You get 25% off a premium membership and a 7-day free trial to check it all out. Blinkist.com/Majority Report. All right, let's get into this. Let's start with, just a little bit of movement that we're seeing in terms of reform. In New York State, they are passing a broader package. These are not huge reforms, but they are, in fact, reforms. Where is it here? Number 2. And this one is a good one. In New York State, I'm having trouble finding it. They have passed a law that basically, or I should say they repealed a law that was protecting the disciplinary records of cops. And so you would have no sense. Here it is. Both houses of the New York State Legislature have passed a bill that repeals Civil Rights Law Section 50A. This has been on the books for 45 years almost. And it shielded police disciplinary records from public view. Of course, this is highly problematic. The guy who, the public was not aware that Pantaleão, the guy who choked Eric Garner to death in 2014, had an abysmal record of misconduct. No idea. And he was kept on the force for, what was it like? Almost like 2 or 3 years. He was suspended or something, but this is just it's a small little piece that helps put pressure on the entire system to hold to account cops who are violent or inappropriate or whatever it is. Apparently this is part of a larger package. Not sure exactly of the other things, but I don't think they're quite huge, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, we talked about what the Democratic offering was in the House the other day. Republicans are pushing 2 separate bills, apparently. I don't know what's going to be in them. I don't think they're going to be terribly impressive, but the idea that they have to respond, I think, is important. And of course, Tim Scott is going to be the guy who he is the only
most
black
embarrassing essentialism that they just tapped Tim Scott.
Oh yeah,
of course.
Oh yeah,
of course.
He was appointed by Mitch McConnell to lead the efforts. Do we have a picture? Brendan, did you pull that picture of the interns? I know this is sort of like...
Oh, we did.
Yeah, I know this isn't like a big deal, but it's a nice shorthand to explain the dynamic that's going on here. And frankly, I think it could be, in many respects, while we have, sort of ongoing issues about class, about money, this, I think, era in many respects is will be defined in many respects, I think, by race. Donald Trump got into office, largely, at least from a Republican perspective, by being the champion of the birther movement. It was, in many respects, a response to having an African-American president, which racialized everything for a lot of people, in some ways good ways, in some ways bad ways. But put this up there. This is the Barack Obama, I guess, interns, right, that they have. Now, there's a real problem with interns, just broadly speaking, and I don't know if they get paid at all. But I
was going to say, trust that class is at the center of these intern classes.
Without a doubt. But with that said, there's no reason to believe the people in this picture have any more or less money than the people in the next picture. But there is a big difference. Just zoom in just a little bit more so that we can really get a sense of this. Okay. Yeah. All right. There you go. Okay. All right. Now let's see the latest iteration of our existing president. There it is. You notice a little difference? There is literally one black person, and I think a woman who
Indian woman,
She's Indian,
South Asian.
South Asian woman.
Yeah, South Asian, and you know, at the very least, a lot of people who can present as white. In fact, everyone else who can present as white. Now, I have no reason to believe that anybody, you know, that when we talk about, you know, what class they come from, that they are, I would imagine, all children or of wealthy people. Maybe there's a couple who are not, who knows, but broadly speaking, that's why I say that in many respects this era is defined by class, because there is a certain constant within American society that may be even that it certainly is a massive problem we have. But when we talk about the differences of these eras, I think in many respects that really captures some of it.
That's there's a really great talk I just watched I think it's called Policing Beyond the Technical Fix by Cedric Johnson. And he's very good at delineating, like, essentially getting the one part of what needs to be done. And I guess there's a little bit of movement in the House bill, is very basic civil rights stuff, to the point that it's appalling and terrifying. Like, you need a federal ban on chokeholds. Like, what?
Right.
What? How is that acceptable? Like, you know, and we've been and you can go and read Bill Bradley, 1990, saying that we need federal bans on racial profiling, talking about New Jersey State Police. And then when you get into the more ambitious demands, like getting rid of broken windows, or what people have, you know, or what they've renamed broken windows, or different versions of defunding and redirecting funds, then it does open up the whole class and economics game. So that's the big concern right now. It's obviously an improvement that the Republicans feel a need to pretend on the civil rights dimension.
Right.
But the broader ambition is still not in play yet.
Well, I think I think in terms of like those, I think the only mechanism that the federal government has to do something like cut their funding is to either cut, there's some programs they can cut, like the 1033, and stop giving them military hardware.
Yeah, that seems pretty basic.
But I think they could also, maybe the courts might have a problem with this. They could tie federal funds into structural reforms with the police. Like, right. You could maybe say police cannot be the first responders for people who are who might be might have mental issues.
Absolutely.
Or there may be mechanisms in which to do that without, you know, running afoul of a Supreme Court that had a problem with, you know, expansion of Medicaid. But for the most part, a lot of this stuff has to happen locally. Although this is interesting.
I just real quick, I think not only, I mean, yeah, it's the Supreme Court is one thing, but I mean, as far as the types of interventions that could potentially be done federally, there's things like you just mentioned, and also this incredible disturbing paradox that the systemic abuse and racism and class structure that defines policing, it's all about over policing and terrorizing certain neighborhoods and communities. And then on the other hand, actually, when it comes to like actual crime, under detectivizing them, in the sense that not investigating murders, not investigating serious crimes. And that's why you'll see in the polling those, you know, very interesting contradictory numbers of, on one hand, absolutely the police are biased, absolutely they lie, absolutely they're abusive. And then on the other hand, for other things, where the hell are they?
Someone, I think I may have mentioned this the other day with Vitali, but Jill Lavoie wrote a book called Ghetto Side, I think it is, that makes that very same argument, that there's too many cases that just don't get resolved in Black communities. And so they don't bother throwing.
Waz and I talked about the difference between the boys in blue and the detectives.
Right.
The completely different policing infrastructure, you know. And I think it should also add, when people talk about defunding, to explain the specifics of what you mean in terms of what is going to get rolled back and eliminated and redeployed, and what is actually just broader question of democracy and public safety, which everyone's entitled to.
Right. This is also very interesting. There are supposedly, I think, up to 12 cases that the Supreme Court may or may not grant certification to. In other words, to hear in the coming the next session. But a federal appeals court yesterday was looking at the case. This is a civil case of 5 cops in West Virginia who were sued for shooting a black man 22 times while he lay motionless on the ground. Someone told me recently that cops, that is a technique that they learned from the Israeli Defense Forces, that you just keep shooting until there is absolutely no movement. You do not hesitate. And a Judge Henry Floyd, an Obama appointee, we make a practice of doing that these days because it becomes very clear on just how important the person who appoints these judges are in terms of their rulings. The Fourth Circuit wrote on behalf of a unanimous 3-judge panel. We have talked in the past about this concept of qualified immunity. And last week we went into it a little bit deeper, but it essentially means that unless that as a rule, if you are a police officer or any really working on behalf of the government, that you have immunity from civil lawsuits unless a court has ruled specifically on a specific incident like this in the past. It's a legal, it's not a statutory thing. It is a legal, I guess, principle that has been developed through the courts. And they said, and they cited George Floyd in this, that to dismiss the case against these officers who shot and killed Wayne Jones, this isn't a ruling. This is just they're ruling on a motion to dismiss based upon this concept of qualified immunity, quote, would signal absolute immunity for fear-based use of deadly force, which we cannot accept. They went on to say, although we recognize that our police officers are often asked to make split-second decisions, we expect them to do so with respect for the dignity and worth of Black lives. Before the ink dried on this opinion, the FBI opened investigation into yet another death of a Black man at the hands of police, this time George Floyd in Minneapolis. This has to stop. Floyd, of course, not related to George Floyd, the judge, I should say. A district court judge had granted qualified immunity to the officers, finding at the time that Jones was shot, that he wasn't secured, it's a legal term, by the officers, so they hadn't used excessive force under the clearly established law on the issue. This is a guy who apparently, Jones, who was killed, had been, was unhoused and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so under the proposals that people are talking about, both in terms of dealing with qualified immunity and in terms of rolling back funding for the police and repurposing that money into support for housing and into support for people with mental issues, in 3 different ways, this shouldn't have happened and wouldn't have happened under these reforms, presumably. And so a really interesting case to note, because it's going to be curious to see if this is just another one that heads up to the Supreme Court. I obviously, I think if you've listened to the show for a long time, know that I think the power of civil lawsuits is pretty substantial, and in terms of changing behavior, and particularly when there is an absence of actual government regulation and reform and oversight of these things, because then it's the last game in town, essentially. But it's good to see that we're seeing this both on like a state level. We're seeing it. Obviously, we talked about what's happening in Minneapolis. We're seeing in California, I think Garcetti said that he was going to cut significantly the budget, the police budget. De Blasio says that he's going to cut it, supposedly. I don't know exactly how much.
Yeah, I'd watch Carcetti and Garcetti and de Blasio very closely on that.
Yeah, I mean,
and Minneapolis too. I mean, for what it's worth. I mean, there's a lot of devils and a lot of details right now.
Indeed, but that's why I think it requires a lot of like ongoing pressure, but to hold to at least these broad things. My daughter just brought me some hot tea.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that was very nice of her. She apparently heard my voice is not doing very well. So here is let's go to Kevin McCarthy, who's talking about police reform. There will be, I should say, some Republicans who are going to be less than enthusiastic about police reform. Again, they see this as a potential winner for them. Or at the very least, they see this as the only possible winner for them at the moment. Here is Kevin McCarthy trying to make people understand that the type of prejudice and bigotry that's involved with the color of people's skin is not the only kind that involves color.
Absolutely. Are you confident that both sides, Republicans and Democrats, can find common ground to come up with some sort of a solution? Because this is a problem.
I know we can come to common ground. This is a problem bigger than even the Floyd family. These are things that have happened that were not on videotape. This is a moment in time that people should work together to strive to solve the problem. I will tell you, the George family, they deserve justice. And no other family should have to go through this again. To the protesters, they have a right to be heard. But to those people who were looting and the Antifa individuals, there should be consequences for those actions. This nation believes in the rule of law, that no one should be judged based upon the color of their skin, and nobody should be judged based upon the color of their uniform either. And that's what we should work together in principle to make sure at the end of the day, the thing that we've all believed is that we strive for a more perfect union, and we can do that. We are Americans. We believe in the ideas of what created our nation, and we can strive to perfect those, and this is our moment in time to do it.
Oh, my God.
Well, first off,
Jesus Christ.
One of the ideas that created our nation involved, let's be honest, a very healthy dose of genocide and racism that subjugated the people who lived here before we did.
I feel like Paulie Walnut's watching that. I'm like, does this? I forget the word, but it's like, does he get paid by the word? It's like, just wrap it up. I get it.
He also referred to them as the George family.
The George family. I caught that, and then also, yeah, the family I'm blatantly disrespecting on national television deserve justice. And then I'm going to compare cop discrimination to. Blue Lives Matter.
I look forward to a roundtable of the two BLMs meeting and sharing their stories and being heard.
I tell you what, Cop Cornel West is a great character. So that we're all in the fucking democratic experiment. Whether we're breaking heads, whether we're paralyzing some Temple University student who's a prick.
McCarthy is a long-time guy that, though, if you search Kevin McCarthy can't speak, people have clipped him on C-SPAN. Kevin McCarthy can't speak 2015.
Peace without freedom is meaningless. Little side note. Do you realize what our current president, Barack Obama, has with the president before Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter? Those two presidents both won the Nobel Peace Prize. Reagan did not. But who brought people more freedom?
Yeah, mic drop, Kevin McCarthy. You know what similarity Kevin McCarthy had with the last Republican leader was that they both had difficulty speaking. It's just that John Brainerd was drunk. Fun.
Exactly. Here is the New York Police Department union president, or I guess the which one of these should we play? Should we play both?
What do you think, Matt?
Let's play the first one. Let's play the first one, then we'll play the second one. We'll play both of them. So here he is addressing. I should just tell you that New York City is a lot more diverse than you would get the idea of with all the cops who showed up for this speech, apparently. Now,
well, I mean, not just New York City, the NYPD.
The NYPD itself is also, yes.
Significantly more diverse.
Significantly more diverse in this.
Yep.
And I will also say, based upon what we've seen over the past couple of weeks, they are much less likely to wear masks when they're out and about than in this video.
This isn't stained by someone in Minneapolis. It's still got a shine on it. And so do theirs. So do theirs. Stop treating us like animals and thugs and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say. We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Trying to make us embarrassed of our profession. 375 million interactions. Overwhelmingly positive. Nobody talks about all the police officers that were killed in the last week in the United States of America, and there were a number of them. We don't condone Minneapolis. We roundly reject what he did as disgusting. It's disgusting. It's not what we do. It's not what police officers do. Our legislators abandoned us. The press is vilifying us. Well, you know what, guys? I'm proud to be a cop. And I'm going to continue to be proud to be a cop until the day I retire. And that's all I have to say.
It was pretty touching stuff. Apparently, there's also no female cops in New York City.
I love that guy. That guy is that is a New York type right there.
Yes.
I mean, and look, if they hadn't been absolutely beating the shit out of people, excuse my language, for the whole week, it might work a little bit better.
It might work a little bit better if there was anything remotely like
hey guys, I'm gonna do an indignant, emotionally charged wine fest at the end of the week. So I say, just bear with me, how about we not commit thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of acts of brutality over this next week? So as an example, if you see a petite woman coming at you by the Barclays Center, don't throw her on the ground to give a concussion. Don't beat the hell out of delivery people, because I'm going to give this speech, Alice.
Or alternatively, what I could do is go out there with my own billy club and smack around the podium a little bit, just to say, like, look, at least I'm being consistent.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. The Timothy Burke on Twitter, Bubba Prague, did everyone the favor of basically combining the concepts that Michael just discussed, which was, covering what they've been doing for the past week and a half as to why they've been so maligned and vilified and abandoned.
Everybody's trying to shame us. The legislators. The press.
Oh my God.
Everybody's trying to shame us into being embarrassed.
Oh my fucking God.
Well, you know what? This isn't stained. It's still got a shine on it. Stop treating us like animals and thugs. Start treating us with some respect. It's disgusting. Trying to make us embarrassed of our profession. Don't resist! Don't resist! Don't resist! Don't resist, bro! I'm not! And that's all I have to say.
I mean,
they didn't even include the driving through people in Flatbush.
Right.
I mean, please. Having a
opening
complex.
the door as they're driving by people to bang them. I mean, come on. I mean, this is just like, and you know, here's the thing. In the run up to the RNC in 2004, there was a cop that we had on for. He had written a book. Actually, it was a very good book. I honestly can't recall the name now. But he was also friends with a buddy of mine who was in city government, who I had known from college. And so, you know, we got friendly with him. And prior to the RNC, we had him in and we talked to him about like what his expectations were of the RNC. Some of it was on air, some of it was off air. And what they had been told in their offices about what to anticipate was so, there was so much hyperbole that, I mean, he believed this stuff, that they get psyched up in the locker room essentially as if they're going out there and they are fighting like guerrilla terrorists, you know, who are armed to the teeth with rocket launchers and whatnot. Now, this was back in 2004. So we're only 3 years out from a major terrorist attack in New York City. And so like, I think the idea that the police would be on that level of insecurity and nervousness, but that's not what was going on here. There was no, like the idea of them being sort of so, roided up and ready to sort of like strike at these, you know, bicyclists. And we can't have that go on. I mean, come on.
Look, they're trying to, I mean, we know like they tried to, I mean, I am no doubt that they build up a bunch of terrifying nonsense in their head. And, you know, there's the whole Antifa nonsense, but I also, you know, they don't, again, it's about policing ideology. It's about if you're out here talking about our conduct and Democrat accountability, then you should be terrorized into going home, no matter who you are or how you're doing it. Bottom line. And don't forget that they allowed just some of the looting and vandalism as the precursor to assault protesters across the board. They had a strategy. Now they're in the look. De Blasio backed off the curfew, and now they have to say, you know, we did maybe a couple of days of trying to spin and doing the fake kneeling. Then we tried to bully and terrorize everybody. And now we're in the third phase, which is, you know, we're not being heard and we're victims.
Right. We're the ones who are being victimized. Here is that same Mike O'Meara on with Brian Kilmeade, who Fox News, again, trying to, they're, you know, we see it in the context of Kevin McCarthy going out there saying, you know, people shouldn't be discriminated because of the color of their skin, but also the color of their uniforms. We see this with Sean Hannity going out there and saying, in many respects, Donald Trump is like George Floyd in terms of they're both victims of narrow bad cops.
Both.
They need to work this entire, everything that is going on into a frame. This is where they're always comfortable. They need to work it into a frame of aggrievement for themselves. This is what they are. This is the key to the conservative mind. It's a question of aggrievement. And here is Mike O'Meara on Fox News with his aggrievement.
So my belief is if we want to learn from this and get better from this, And as it comes to law enforcement, there's a Republican and Democrat proposal to make some changes. So, Mike, if you want to make things better for the men and women who wear the uniform, what do you hope is in those changes? Do you want raise in money? Do you want longer times in the academy? Do you want better equipment? Is there certain things that make your job easy?
Yes, all of the above. All of the above. You know, I say this to everybody that'll listen to me. We want to be a well-respected, well-trained, well-equipped police department, and we want to treat the public fairly, and we want to be partners in that reform. But reform isn't just about saying that all police are bad. Well, my message to every single cop that's out there across this country is that you are a good person and you do a good job. And we are not defined by someone we never met. And that's not how we act every day. And that's why I got emotional, because I don't want to be painted with that broad brush of we are all these racist thugs. That's not who we are. And if most people that know us and everybody out there says it, it's the best catchphrase ever. 99.9% of the cops are good and honorable people, but we have to change everything and diminish their civil rights and diminish what they do and scrutinize them more than anybody on earth is scrutinized. I mean, it just makes no sense to us. So to all the cops out there, you know, you're doing a great job.
First of all, I don't think that police have their civil rights in any way curbed. I want to make that clear to Amira. But I mean, I think on some level, part of this is if they make it about, and even if you accept the premise that 99.9% of all cops are good guys and they're all great, then it really doesn't in any way inhibit the need to reform what police do, what their portfolio is, how much money they get. The idea that they need more money for or equipment is just absurd. It's just absurd. They're well paid. I got no problem with that. I'd like to see that actually, that pay that they get, which presumably does not buy them any more restraint or deal with the risks that they're taking. Let's give that pay also to teachers and social workers and other city workers across the board. But basically taking stuff off their plate. I mean, this is why I like the framing of they're overworked. They've got too much on their plate. We're asking the cops to do too much.
I mean, that's completely true, right? I mean, they are.
I think it's true.
It's a great frame. It's also true. And,
yes.
And I've heard, cops that don't have the, unbelievable delusional narcissism that you just saw in that clip, which raises a whole bunch of other problems that we've been talking about. But we'll say on that narrow point that it is absolutely unfair and inappropriate and not what they want to be doing to either be specifically as a task terrorizing and over policing and harassing specific communities in a way that they're almost like, the paramilitary of the real estate industry. Or on the other hand, if somebody's having a mental health episode, even if, have good intentions, handle it relatively speaking well, it doesn't turn into a horrifying incident, it's still not their task. I mean, I'm not going to compare.
Just because you have a gun does not mean that you're well suited for that.
Absolutely. I mean, probably quite the opposite, right? And I mean, there is look, it's of course not an exact parallel because at the end of the day, the right wants to drain money from schools and, Democratic leaders like Cuomo want to make, charters and undermine the teachers union. But and police departments get fed because they're the militarized side of outsourcing social problems and outsourcing not dealing with anything. But there is, in a very broad aggregate sense, there's a clear parallel there in terms of you're taking discrete professions and you're saying you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for poverty. You're responsible for no investments in, public health, nutrition, all the rest of it. It's completely wrong. And there have been cops who've tried to speak out on these things, and they always point to that.
Let's, for a moment, tune into what Matt Walsh, not the funny one, not the funny ha-ha one, just the sort of funny, something's funny with this guy.
I never remember who this guy is.
He's the guy from the Daily Wire, who is highly moralistic, I think, right? And he is like his boss, who is the Pope of the Jews, Ben Shapiro. He is apparently the Pope of who's a great man and who's not a great man, or who should be in any way celebrated, but he, in doing so, in making his assessment as Pope of people's worth, misses the point entirely.
Figures, many icons, many world renowned people, many heroes, right, have died, and there's been moments of silence for them and other symbolic gestures to honor them. Have we ever seen 8 minutes kneeling on the ground to honor anybody? And this is for George Floyd. This is, I think, the most extravagant and solemn memorial we've ever seen politicians give to anybody. And this is for George Floyd. Let me just say, George Floyd, I believe, died unjustly. And that's terrible. A lot of people die unjustly every day, and that's terrible too. His life, no more important than any of theirs.
Pause it for one second. When he says that George Floyd died unjustly, and a lot of people die unjustly, do you think that's like sort of diminishing the point that he's trying to make in the first sentence? Isn't the second sentence, isn't that a qualifier? Like,
I also I wouldn't, I mean, just even unjustly, it's just, what? Especially coming from, I mean, I'm remembering this guy now. I mean, this guy will use, hyperbole about, I don't even know, a book that he doesn't like being available at a public library is a threat to the foundation of civilizations. But a guy being publicly murdered on the street by a squad of police officers, this is unjust.
There's no doubt in my mind. I don't think it this specifically, but this is the type of guy who would do like a 45-minute rant on how they could do Ghostbusters with women or something. It's like one of those things.
Right. That type of guy.
But just to be clear on what he's talking about, he is saying like that people kneeled for 8 minutes or 9 minutes as a way of paying, of celebrating Floyd. I wonder if it's possible that he doesn't know that the reason why people kneeled for 9 minutes is because that's exactly what Chauvin, the cop, did to Floyd with his knee driving into his neck as his face was smushed on the floor, on the concrete.
Very unjust.
I wonder if he understands that. It's not like, this is ostentatious. 9 minutes. Who gets on their knees for 9 minutes for a guy who's not even that great? Keep going.
Every day, and that's terrible too. His life, no more important than any of theirs. They're all important, all inherently valuable, as we discussed. But other than how he died, this was not a great man. There is no evidence that he was a great man or even a good man. So you could be upset about the injustice of it, and that's fine. That's understandable. But turning this man into a martyr and a hero and canonizing him after his death is ridiculous and outrageous and offensive. It is possible, to make the case that someone died unjustly without falling to your knees in worship and adulation and acting like they were great, heroes that should be remembered through the ages. It is possible. It's very possible. So we could go with that strategy.
He doesn't know why people take a knee for 9 minutes. He doesn't get it. And other than the way that how he died, this is just unbelievable to me that you could just ignore how he died. Let's put that aside and then let's assess this. Now, we wouldn't know George Floyd if he had died any other way. And the fact that how he died is representative of a massive multi-century problem that we have in this country that deals with a huge portion of our people.
It's also, he's doing something really, I mean, he probably doesn't even know it, but it's so sinister because look, the bottom line is that George Floyd could be a great guy, could be a bad guy. It's totally irrelevant. And I'm actually sure that, like most human beings, he was some combination of the latter. What has happened as a result of his murder, in addition to it galvanizing this much bigger uprising, is that people who remember him as someone that they loved, a friend, a family member, have actually been able to primarily talk about him. Unlike in countless other cases, and I'm always thinking of Giuliani, New York, where the police murder an Amadou Diallo and these people leak their juvenile records or, you know, use the media and a police PR budget and, you know, public office to demonize and besmirch them. And again, the point I'm trying to make is that in the bigger picture, honestly, it's irrelevant. It simply does not matter whether you're the greatest person or the biggest jerk in the world. You can't be murdered by a police officer. But it's also that they resent that they don't get to dictate and try to demonize and belittle the narrative. The young man that was murdered in Ferguson, I mean, they even did this to Trayvon Martin. He was a fucking child.
Right.
And this one does not get to be, it is being determined by his community and by family, who are, of course, remembering the many ways in which obviously he was a wonderful person. Just in the same, you know, like in his fully fleshed out humanness. They want to demonize him. That's the script.
All right, we got to take a break and head into the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible, folks. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you keep the show trucking. Every single show we did last week was demonetized on YouTube. I mean, understandable, but it is our members that keep our show afloat in times like these. If you have the financial resources, jointhemajorityreport.com. If you do not, but want the extra content, want the fun half or free half, free of commercials, send us an email, majorityreporters@gmail.com. Give us a little time. We will get there and we will hook you up. Also, don't forget AM Quickie. You can sign up AM Quickie and justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Michael, today is Wednesday. That means that last night was Tuesday. That means that you were probably sitting exactly where you are now.
Yes.
Doing TMBS. Oh, saw the book in the background as soon as I said that.
Talking with Vivek Chibber, author of The ABCs of Capitalism and professor of sociology at New York University. That was a great conversation. We covered everything from the nature of, I mean, on a very technical sense, capitalism itself, the history of South Africa, the what's happening now in the longshoremen walkouts, and the sort of non-normative reasons workers' movements are at the center of left strategy, because basically it's the only sort of mass block of countervailing power that's possible. We went into that, and we covered a whole bunch of other things on the show, including talked a little bit about Olof Palme, because today supposedly they revealed who assassinated him, and he was a very fascinating and important leader. And we went into obviously a bunch of different conversations about policing and a variety of other things. So go to patreon.com/TMBS, get the whole thing, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. And I will tease, I guess, because it's fun that next week we're going to have No Chomsky on. So
That's very exciting.
Check
I
it out.
mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah.
Looking
forward to it.
Yeah, apparently the guy that killed Palm was supposedly killed himself in 2000.
Yeah.
And did so just because he didn't like his politics. Also, folks, check out Nomi's show, Nomiki show, both on now YouTube and on patreon.com. She had Alex Vitale on, among others. Check out her conversation with him about the one guy whose ideas is really driving a lot of, I think, the police reform, at least that the left is talking about. Also, don't forget, you can check out the Antifada, patreon.com/the Antifada. Jamie and crew are doing live streams a lot, and they've got a lot of stuff on there, so check that out. Matt, what's happening on Literary Hangovers Twitch?
We're getting into some pirate tales, so I'll be playing Assassin's Creed Rogue while listening to James Fenimore Cooper's The Pilot soon. So twitch.tv/Literary Hangover.
Oh, and folks, check out our merch. We got merch now. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. I think we're going to sell out of a couple of things already. It's been nuts. And we're sending a ton of cash to the Pacific Northwest Immigration Rights Organization. All the proceeds from the masks go there. So people have gone nuts on the masks. And we use that slogan that they have in Czechoslovakia. Your mask protects me. My mask protects you. So check it out. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. Number 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238. 56, 27, 1/2, 5 eighths, 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I
Got to get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
welcome back, folks. It's the fun half of the Majority Report. Let's go to the phones, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Here we go. Calling from a 320 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Carl from Minneapolis.
Carl from Minneapolis. Welcome to the program.
Shit, I did not expect to be first.
Well, Carl.
Where to start? It's been a long couple of weeks.
I bet.
I just want to start by saying thank you guys for all you guys do. It's been a hard couple of weeks, and to have some sane people to listen to is very helpful. A quick shout out, if I may, to Michael and the boys over at TBS. I'm nervous. A couple months ago, they shot the Hannity tribe in Ecuador for standing up for global. I can't talk when I'm nervous. Sorry.
You're doing fine, Carl. You're doing fine.
Thanks for environmental stuff.
I remember.
That tribe is very, 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 very close to dear to my heart. My grandfather was a missionary that tried to reach out to the tribe in the 1950s when the Ecuadorian government and the Shell Oil Company were about to just wipe them out. They were completely off-grid, a tribe back then in the 50s, and were very, very violent. And the Shell Oil Company was losing employees, and so my grandfather and some men went to reach out to the tribe missionaries and were killed, actually, by the tribe.
Oh, geez.
Bad part of the story, but, well, not bad, but interesting part of the story, but it progresses to the tribe actually reaching out to the missionaries and ending their kind of violent ways, and which saved the tribe from, I think, extermination from the government back then. But I lost my grandfather, and my father lost his father. But I've grown up in that mission thing, and it really reminded me that you guys are my political home. And I just want to say thanks to the TBS boys for calling out that tribe. That tribe is my family now. I've lived and worked with them a little bit on occasion. I have so much stuff I could talk to you guys about. Wow. I just wanted to preface that as a thank you. My question right now, I guess, so that I don't take up too much of your guys' time, is simply this. With all the policing and stuff that's going on, and all of my interactions with the police, I have a question about fines and fees. We're talking about income of the cops and where their money and revenue comes from. And I guess my question, thought about a lot of it, but the one that I haven't heard anybody talk about is fines and fees, speeding tickets and parking tickets, and how that is such I've been very passionate about feeling like that is a tax on poor.
Yeah.
A tax on poor people, just because of it's a percentage thing. A rich person can go get 5 speeding tickets, and it costs them less than 0.5% of their income. But, if I'm late for a job and I get a speeding ticket and I make, I'm one of those people that, works less than $15 an hour. And I guess are you guys, is this something we can add on to this conversation? Is it too early?
No, I think, look, I mean, yes, it's highly regressive, but I think also this dynamic got a lot of attention in the wake of St. Louis, and that, and I think when we interviewed, was it Carl Johnson, Ed Johnson, recently about, he was writing about St. Louis. Walter Johnson. Sorry. I think we brought that up. It was certainly in his book about particularly in Ferguson. That was, a huge source of it doesn't go directly to the cops, but they bring it in, and that's the part of the calculus.
Goes to the whole wealthy part of the town.
Well, it goes into the general fund, and it's a redistribution.
Fund. Yeah,
and basically what it is, it's a way of like, we don't have to tax everybody, rich people, because we're basically levying this tax on poor people. And yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think, I think you eliminate that dynamic or at least you mitigate that dynamic. I think if you say, like, look, we're going to have a limited limited portfolio of things that we expect the police to do. And therefore, we're going to take away a percentage of their budget. Is it going to be 30%, 40%, 60%, whatever that is? And over time, I think that number actually grows, because you begin to realize, like, you start to have confidence that, like, hey, we don't need police when it comes to dealing with folks who are unhoused. We don't need police when it comes to dealing with people who are dealing with mental issues. We don't need police to be pulling over as many, traffic violations. We just don't need it. We can actually maybe you just have, if you.
Yeah, I grew up in central Minnesota, about 2 hours west of the Twin Cities metro, and we always knew about speed traps, and it was something I grew up with, where it was like, there's a certain towns that you do not speed even 1 mile and over the speed limit. They will pull you over and give you a speeding ticket, basically to supplement the budgets of those smaller towns, which are relying on that income. And I always just knew that just seemed off, even as years ago before my.
I think there's two different issues, right, with that. Like, one, obviously you shouldn't be using it as a mechanism in which to fund your city or your town. But the other is that, like, this can be a little bit more touchless. If you're really concerned about people running red lights, or you're concerned about people speeding, you can set up a speed trap. Cop sits in his car, shoots the radar gun, and then just mails, you see the license plate. I mean, they do this with, you send the ticket that way. It's not like, you're going up to the car and the percentage of times that the cop has, like, why does the cop need discretion in that situation? For every time that he does give a ticket or doesn't give a ticket, it balances out in the end. It's better not to have those interactions, because how many of them go south? I don't know, but enough that it's not worth it. And so,
I think that's
mail the ticket.
Also, people should really look at it. It wasn't that long a period of time, but it's enough to gather a little bit of anecdotal evidence from. The cops did a strike in New York several years ago because they were angry at de Blasio. But what the strike amounted to was they stopped policing nonsense. They stopped, harassing people for, drinking a beer on their porch. They stopped busting people for hopping a turnstile. And the argument, again, even though they don't use broken windows terminology anymore, the argument of terrorizing people and in specific zip codes for, like, petty nonsense is that this is going to bleed into other things. That if you allow the small thing to happen, the big thing happens. It didn't happen. I mean, honestly, these cops during that walkout were striking themselves out of a lot of their jobs, frankly.
It was a Wally Pipp situation.
Yeah. They were just showing, like, you don't need to do it. And there is, and when it comes to those fines, I mean, this is another reason, though, that it's really important. I think, we've got to make sure that it isn't just cuts, that the money stays there and is redistributed to other departments. It isn't just new austerity. And I would also, by the way, tack on, I think, much more tougher regulations on private security firms and things like that, because that's going to be another thing we'll see.
Appreciate the call, Carl.
Can I take one question, one little add-on? Do you think that I think in Europe they do like I'll take the question off, but like a token-based fining system. So as far as like strikes against your license, I don't know much about that system. Is that something that we could, or a similar system, transition to away from fees? Thank you guys so much.
Appreciate the call.
Thanks. I
don't know that system either. I mean, I'm sure there's something that we can do that's more equitable. I don't know if it's a question of like a sliding scale based upon your income. I mean, that's certainly, I just remember like a piece where I think it was about Letterman and how when he was driving into New York to do a show, all the time you get like these speeding tickets at 150 miles an hour or something like that. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. My insurance is going to go up. Who cares? I make $10 million a year, whatever it is. Like, I don't care. And it seemed quite obvious. All right, let's talk a little bit about what happened in Georgia last night. There was an election yesterday. There was an enormous, I don't know how to phrase this. The number of polling places that have been available that have been closed, not even as a function of coronavirus, but in Georgia over the past couple of years as a function of the Supreme Court rolling back or gutting really the pre-clearance measures in the Voting Rights Act. Just to remind people, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, there were about 16, I think maybe it's 12 states or 14 states, and then an additional like counties within states. In New York, there were two counties, like Queens County and one other, that were under pre-clearance because they had a history of disenfranchising minority voters. And pre-clearance basically meant that if you did anything to change your voting procedures, if you closed polling places in a certain amount or a certain percentage, if you restricted hours in which you're going to vote, if you restricted days, if you inhibited absentee ballot, whatever it was, any change to your voting needed to be proposed to the Department of Justice, and they needed to sign off on it. So the burden of proof was on the applicants, these states, which had a history of racially discriminating against different people in terms of voting. And so the burden of proof is on them to show that this is not going to inhibit people's right to vote. The Supreme Court, even though a virtually unanimous Senate, I think it was 96-4 in 2007, which means that the vast majority of Republicans even reauthorized the Voting Rights Act. In 2011, maybe it was 2014, somewhere around there. I
actually think it was 2013, not to be contrary in the middle of your numbers, but when Robert stripped it,
area, the Supreme Court basically ruled that, in the words of Scalia, like they did, the Senate reauthorized it because they were afraid, because it was just too much of a hot potato. And remember, these are the guys who are like, we can't be activists, judges. In other words, we can't thwart the will of the legislature. And they said, and I think John Roberts basically said, look, racism is basically over. It's not a fair. You can have the concept of preclearance. It's just that the way that it's been determined who's subjected to it is not fair to these states. And so the formula was destroyed, and they said, we will throw it back to Congress to come up with a new formula. And of course, it's Republicans controlling at least one house during all that time. So that was dead in the water. Democrats, the first bill that they passed was a reauthorization of that Section 5, but that dead in the water because the Republican Senate's not going to pass it. Since that time.
Can I just quote really quick? I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is 2013. Because the disparate treatment of the states is, quote, based on 40-year-old facts having no logical relationship to the present day.
Racism's over.
That's it.
So they, and since that time, all of those states changed their voting rules in some fashion or another that have disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of people. Here is a drone shot of voting lines in the Georgia primary last night. People were in line for like 12 hours trying to vote. This is nuts. These are lines of people looking to vote. They needed a drone shot to get this. It's just insanity. I mean, you have people who are 5 or 6 feet apart from each other, but regardless, it's still insanity. And they're just making it very, very hard to vote. They're basically setting it up so that when the general election comes in the fall, they're like, well, it's not like this is unprecedented. I mean, we have to get over the notion that we're going to get vote tallies incidentally on election day. That's not happening this year. Maybe in the future because of all the absentee balloting that's going on and the procedures that people are going to have to. But look at that. It just goes on and on and on. This is absurd. This is absurd that it's this difficult to vote. You know, you hear like, remember like the big talking point about if Bernie Sanders got the nomination, you'd see all the right wingers going into, supermarkets and going like long lines. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get long lines to go to the supermarket. Well, what about these massive, massive lines to go and exercise like the bedrock fundamental right of self-determination, right? That we pride ourselves on.
Right.
And here is Doug Collins, who is one of 21 people looking to unseat Loeffler, or run, I should say. She's the incumbent, but was it Sessions? Who was it? I can't even remember whose seat it was.
It was Sonny Purdue, right?
No, Purdue.
Johnny Isakson.
Isakson. Sorry.
And
Purdue was governor.
Purdue is the other senator.
They're both up now.
And they're both up for re-election.
Because Purdue's ag, right?
David Perdue is up for re-election. Isaacson is stepped down. So there's a special.
So who's Trump's agriculture secretary?
Sonny
Is that
Perdue.
Is that the former governor? Whatever, it doesn't matter. All right, whatever. George has got.
Here is Collins, who is running against one of the people running against Kelly Loeffler, and it's a special election that's going to take place on the same day in November. So there is no primary. It's just basically one of these like jungle elections where it's like 21 people literally running. I think
free for all.
Free for all. But here he is explaining like, "Hey, man. It is what it is."
As well, y'all got those new voting machines, those touchscreen machines, but people were complaining because they were in line for 3 hours plus there too. The problem is, the worry is November.
People weren't in line for 3 hours plus. People were in line for 8 hours. Good.
But people were complaining because they were in line for 3 hours plus there too. The problem is, the worry is November 3rd. What do you say about it?
Well, again, what we're seeing again in Georgia is what we've seen in previous elections. It's, again, counties are responsibility for putting up and setting up their elections as it goes, and putting enough voting machines, having enough trained workers, and to get that done. It's concerning to me that it seems like, especially in our metro areas, we seem to have the same problems over and over again. I voted on these machines early. I did it in person early voting. The touchscreens work. We're used to touchscreens in Georgia, and now it just has a paper ballot component to it. I think what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that we're doing better training. We're doing better locations, and remembering that the people like to come out and vote. People do, like your dad, like to come out and actually vote in person. It's a part of our pride as Americans to be a part of elections, but we've just got to do better planning and better training. And it seems like we always in Georgia seem to come up with the same counties in the same areas that have same problems no matter what the machines are.
That's a coincidence. Anybody want to take a hazarded guess as to what these same counties and same places, like who's voting in those places? What a coincidence.
Quinkydink.
And I love the idea that, like, look, this is just, it's really the responsibility of like a guy named Bill and two other guys. They are, part-time dog catcher in
It's always a problem in the metro areas, and I don't understand why the local librarians can't sort out a statewide absolute lack of infrastructure to allow people to voting.
I love the idea. It's like he's presenting like this. Well, it's the first time we've had elections. So, I mean, this is something that has presumably been going on for a couple hundred years in terms of elections down there. Maybe they should get it down by now. It seems
I don't even want to.
There's no solution to it. It's this is very difficult stuff. It's like self-driving cars, sort of. There's no way to fix this, so I think we're just gonna go with it. That'll be fine. Let's go back to the phones. Calling from what do we got here? 240 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
Yeah, it's you.
Hey, Sam, this is Dova from Maryland. How are you?
Dova from Maryland. I'm fine. What's on your mind?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Stephen Smith race in West Virginia.
Yeah, that's good transition. Perfect.
Yeah, so unfortunately, he wasn't able to pull off the victory. He did come really close, though, closer than a lot of people expected. He came in with about 33% of the vote to Salango's 39%. I thought he really had a unique opportunity here because of the three-way dynamic of the race between him, Salango, and Ron Stallings. Stallings was a little more conservative, and so naturally would kind of pull more away from Salango.
Can I
really came down.
Hold on for 1
Yeah,
second. Let me just interject here so that people can catch people up. Stevens was the basically at the top of a ticket of an entire, I guess you call it slate. I think it was something like 90 candidates who ran under I think the slogan was West Virginia can't wait. And they were running for city council. They were running for, local school boards. They were running for, small time judge seats, whatever is county supervisors or whatever they call it there. And I think my understanding is that about 24 of those people won, and they range from including, I think, Paula Jean Swearigan, which she was one who is running, won the Senate primary, and is running to face Caputo. Is that her name? Capito. But so just people understand that. And he is an organizer and very progressive, Medicare for all, et cetera, et cetera. And they had sworn off like PAC money. And so it hopefully is the beginning of a movement. I think he was probably hurt more by COVID than I think he was hurt by COVID more than his opponent. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, being a grassroots candidate, not being able to canvass definitely hurt. But he still kept it close. It really came down to Kanawha County, which is where Ben Salango is from. That's where he's county commissioner. But if you take all the votes outside of that, he was within about 1,000 votes. So it really came down to that last county. The margin there was 10,000 votes. He lost by about 10,000 overall. But to your point about the West Virginia Can't Wait movement, 35 candidates had won their primary battles, and some of them also just won seats, I believe, last night, including four congressional candidates, which is a huge deal, I think. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs again, to be honest. I know it's early, but he's really established a big network there. And if a lot of these candidates that he's running with, or that he ran with, at least in the primary, can make that leap, he'll have a huge network of elected officials that he can also, I guess, tap into next time around. But I wanted to, and just last point, and I'll pass it back to you. I wanted to make a point about the TV spending. I think that's what really that really hurt him. If you look at the difference in TV spending, Salango was putting up like 190,000, 200,000 in a lot of these media markets, and Smith barely put up, a couple thousand in most of them. And I think that if he were to spend a little more money in the areas where he was already winning, he might have been able to make that gap wide enough to really negate that Kanawha County stronghold for Salango.
Yeah,
I mean, if I can turn this into
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, generally, this is going to be the problem for progressives this year in terms of like these primaries, is that their strength is that they have more volunteers than they do. The relationship between volunteers and money is different than it is for the incumbents. And the volunteers can't do as much. You cannot maximize and optimize what a volunteer can do in a situation where you have like social distancing, frankly. And so that's basically, that's going to be a big issue. So, when we look to like primaries like Jamal Brown or Bowen rather, or I'm trying to think of others. Well, we saw Nabila Islam lost her election. She lost it pretty handily, I guess, in Georgia. But
Simonella Lopez, I guess, is another one in New York. I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Did you want Dova?
Michael?
Yeah, Dova, go ahead. Just finish your thought, Dova, and we'll go.
Yeah, so if I could kind of turn it into a question, and then you can take this offline. He really was ahead of him in fundraising. What bolstered Salengo was a $500,000 loan to his own campaign, which kind of ties back to the first question I had when I first called in about taking on these really wealthy governors with, well-connected fundraising networks. Do you know if there is a sort of like national organization? I haven't found any, but like a national organization in the sort of mold of like a Justice Democrats that does focus on state government, state legislatures, state, executive races for governors. Because I think that if we can, build an organization at that level, that could also kind of create like a leadership pipeline going, to the top as well. But yeah, you can take that offline.
Well, what's Kleinman's, Brendan, what's Kleinman's organization?
Future Now Fund. Now Fund.
Future Now is an organization that is focusing, and we have Aaron on occasionally for elections. They focus on those type of things, on state races.
I was talking.
I'll look into that.
Yeah,
I would check out Dustin Guastella's work. He's a director of operations for a Teamster local in Philadelphia, and he does a lot of stuff with Philadelphia DSA. And he and I talked about this, and he's, he wants more candidates to come directly out of the labor movement because he's in the labor movement. But his point, which is, to me, I just think is very basically strategically sound, is you got to figure out how to get more people like Sherrod Brown elected, not Sherrod Brown specifically, but just the idea that ultimately it's one part of it is getting people who are more on the left elected, but the next part is to figure out people who are more left winning in somewhat competitive districts. Because as of now, from the House leadership perspective, it's just like, okay, you're on the left and you represent a safe blue district. Like, I just as soon as see you get the hell out of there, because I know that district isn't in question. So I think that, and he had some really interesting ideas, and actually some good state local examples. One state rep in Pennsylvania who's following this model. So, but I thought the West Virginia results were not that bad. I thought the Nabila results were pretty discouraging and made me think of Dustin. And Jamal Bowman, who was a great candidate, he kind of fits the mold. Like, it's like in the sense that looks where like it's the most doable so far, which is you can have a really good progressive candidate get rid of an exhausted machine person. But those are all different kinds of races.
Let me flip it though. If we can't do that one, then it's going to be harder to do the Nabila Islam. I think. I mean, maybe they're not necessarily even related, but
I think that I don't know as much about her district, because I know that, that might be more, but I think Dustin is basically saying, like, again, you'll like this, like, fiercely, of course, the fight is 100% for a single payer. But, again, if you get somebody who represents like a serious local labor constituency and, they're not all the way there, as an example, yet on Medicare for all, or they don't have all of the cultural signaling that people might expect, they might actually be the perfect center-left candidates for not only to win more districts, but actually the kind of districts that they can go to Pelosi and say, no, you can't just muscle me out with someone from the machine. I actually beat I won in this. I'm like a blue dog district, except I'm not a blue dog. I'm like a, progressive labor candidate. That's why Sherrod Brown, the way he holds his seat in Ohio is worth looking at.
Yep. Well, Iowa is in play this year. People are starting to talk about that. And, if Smith can come back in 4 years, he's only 40 years old. He comes back in 40 years and they're building. And what you've also created is a template, like this idea of doing just a slate of candidates who are operating under basically not even an institution as much as they are just a set of ideas that everybody has signed on to. If out of those, I guess 36 people, if that's the number of people who won the primaries, a couple of dozen of those in state government in different local areas, that's worth some votes over the course of an entire state.
I think that Slate idea is great.
Let's go check out. Let's go back to Brian Kilmeade for a moment, because we should turn our attention to what's happening in terms of coronavirus. Texas, North and South Carolina, California, Oregon, Arkansas, Mississippi, Utah, Arizona. Spikes in hospitalizations, not just in positive tests, but in hospitalizations. Positive tests can be a function that we now have more testing than we did 6 to 8 weeks ago. Hospitalizations are the sort of the best measure, they say. We are, of course, now 14, 16 days out from Memorial Day weekend. That is what this is attributed to. In Arizona, they are very, very close to busting through their capacity to deal with it. Their number of ICU beds is going to be a problem, or could very well be. So we see all these spikes everywhere. And, Brian Kilmeade, at least Fox is no longer going out there saying this is a hoax. Or sort of are they?
I was stunned by this. A lot of people were floored by this, because we heard, don't go see your grandparents, don't go see your senior aunt, because if you were carrying the symptoms, you could kill them, because they're older, they're obviously more susceptible to the virus. Even though you feel great, you test positive, you test negative, or we don't have a test, where you don't have a fever, you stay away. Now they say, well, asymptomatic, it's hard to transfer it. Then they say, when it comes to surfaces, wow, you got to wipe down everything. Well, then again, we're not really sure. And then Dr. Fauci yesterday comes out and says there's so much we don't even know about the virus. We are a long way from getting out of the woods with it. Dr. Nicole Sapphire weighed in.
From day one, we've been having misinformation. In the beginning, though, all of their information came from China, which is why a lot of the information was false. Now the information is coming from many countries around the world, including the United States. The good news is asymptomatic spread. People who don't get any symptoms at all are less likely to transmit the virus. That is still excellent news. But the reality is there are still people who are going to get symptoms there, or maybe there are still people who won't get symptoms at all who can transmit the virus. It's just much less.
All I'm saying is, I understand staying healthy, and 100,000 people lost their lives, and it's tragic. I get it. But just so you understand, while the scientists are working it out, we are losing 25,000 retail stores will not open again. There are so many people that have lost their livings and their livelihoods. The coronavirus restrictions have devastated black business owners. They are down 41% of black business owners since the pandemic hit. So while the scientists work it out and push and pull, we are paying a huge economic, personal, psychological price. They have to get their act together, and I think they got to do a much better job in watching what they say, and because legislators respond to it because they don't want to be caught, and businesses respond to it because they don't want to be sued. Enough said.
Right. Yeah. You know what's funny? You know who else should watch what they say? Is people who have massive platforms on cable television shows. Because when did he say that, Brendan? When did he repeat? When did he do that?
That was this morning.
Okay. That was this morning. And yesterday, you can find this anywhere, but this is, Stat News. This is where I go to get a lot of my, honestly.
Stat News.
Yeah. Healthcare news these days. Stat News. Top World Health Organization official clarified on Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. That scientists have not determined yet how frequently people with asymptomatic cases of COVID-19 pass the disease on to others, a day after suggesting that such spread is very rare. In other words, they were misinterpreted.
Or as Dr. Fauci said, there's a lot about this we still don't know.
But get your acts together, scientists. Figure it out. This is The guy is saying you got to be careful and not spread disinformation because black businesses are going to suffer, which good for Kilmeade. I wonder if the words black businesses suffer is the first time that those words have ever come out of his mouth in the history of him being on television or radio. But the idea that he's going to go on and report misinformation while chastising everyone else for reporting misinformation is just chef's kiss type of situation here.
So much whiplash. I mean, do you also? Yeah, I don't even. It's.
This is why this sucks. This is like why a pandemic sucks, because it's right in the name, novel coronavirus. It is the human beings have not dealt with this before.
So in other words, we don't know.
We don't know.
So there's a lot of things. So in other words, it's very interesting. They call it novel.
What's going on here?
They call it novel because we don't know. So it's really a very interesting thing. But it's also why it's frustrating. It's also why it sucks. Like Sam says,
it sucks. But the reality is like we're and it's not just 100,000 deaths. It's 112,000 deaths. It's
it's quite a few people
more than what he was talking about. 10% more.
The process by which they've normalized that as a target is petrifying.
Unbelievable, right?
Petrifying. Yes.
Let's remember that the 75 times that they voted to defund Obamacare, much of that was, or at least, the impetus for that, and people may not remember this, but we had 2 years of John McCain's vice presidential nominee talking about death panels and how we were going to kill grandma because we were going to ration healthcare. When in fact, like these guys were willing to sacrifice a grandma, as it were, for the economy at a time where, most Americans, the majority of Americans don't want to come out. And we can clearly, obviously, afford to pay businesses to pay their employees to work by not coming into work. Like, that's your job. Just accept the pay and don't go to work. But we'll see. There'll be another round of stimulus, hopefully in July, maybe as this thing gets worse. But, you could
interestingly, as Lee Fang reports, the part of the House bill that gives bailout money to lobbyists doesn't poll well.
Yeah, we're very weird.
Just kind of shocking.
Very shocking.
that a statement bill from the House maybe shouldn't have included bailout funds for lobbying firms.
This is sort of fascinating. This is from Cambridgeshire. I don't know where in England Cambridgeshire is. I assume it's probably near Cambridge, but I don't know. Could be a shire of Cambridge.
Absolutely.
But I really, this captures a dynamic, and you have to get past the fact that, like, to American ears, a British accent sounds really polite and like and sympathetic, I think, just regardless of what the context is. But this captures a dynamic that I think that for whatever reason, the vast majority of white people cannot for some reason get through their heads, that the idea of like being racist does not necessarily mean that you're burning a cross on someone's lawn. Like, even if you can rationalize it, it still can be racist. Watch this clip. Oh, I should just to set it up. This is a video taken. I don't know when this is from. Do we know when this is from?
I'm not sure. No.
Okay. It is a British cop who is passenger is a black man who is videotaping the cop. And here it is.
Sergeant, we'll be state 5 in a couple of seconds. Right, I've got to go to quite a serious incident. The reason I stopped you is when you came out of the Barnes, no offence to you, but you're a black male, okay? I'm not going to lie to you.
So it's racist when you stop me?
I'm not saying that at all. The reason I've stopped you, I'll explain if you let me finish, all right? in this area, we have a number of drug dealers. I'm not saying you're a drug dealer. That come up from other areas that don't live anywhere around here.
I live here.
I know you might know that, but I don't because I've never met you before. Yeah. Okay, so the reason I've stopped you is because I haven't seen you before, and I've been a local officer for a long time here. Yeah. So I've turned round, and then when we came out to Kings Avenue, your car had disappeared.
Okay. I hadn't disappeared because I saw you in the mirror actually, because you come out.
We saw you go up Kings Avenue, and we went up Kings Avenue, and then we couldn't see your vehicle. So whether you went off us down the side street or not, I don't know. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. Have you got any ID on you? Just for your details on, just so I can tell your ID, mate. That'd be brilliant.
Did you didn't hear the update for us, did you? No. Industrial accident at Wild Tracks, life-changing injuries they want us to go to.
Okay, no worries.
Who wants to see it?
I'll take it, sir. Thank you very much.
Just explain why we stopped you. So for me, a little bit, that seems a little bit strange sometimes, that I drive past the car and then sometimes it disappears. No offence to you, you might have been just going to see a friend. I've got no idea because I don't know you until I stop and ask. Okay. All right. Then when we've done a little bit of a drive around through that estate, we've then seen your car again on Kings Avenue, and that's why we pulled you over, just to see what you're up to, basically. Okay. I'm not accusing you of being a drug dealer, I'm not accusing you of being a criminal, but if I don't stop people, how can I do my job?
Is what you did.
Yeah, but not because I'm racist, but because in this area we have a number of people that come up to this area that are young black males that deal drugs.
So if I was white, you wouldn't have stopped me?
No, I stopped lots of white people.
But if I was white, you wouldn't have stopped me?
Yes, I would have done.
You would have stopped me if I was white, even though I drove past you.
If you're accusing me of being a racist,
I'm not accusing you of being racist. Right. I'm just asking you a question. If I drove past you, if I was a white person, I drove past you, you wouldn't have turned around and come after me, would you?
Maybe not today, but
no,
I stopped.
You're racist,
no, I'm not racist. I stopped more white people than I ever stopped black people.
But you're just proving it, but haven't you? If I was white and I drove past you, you would not have turned around. But if I'm a black person that drove past you, you've turned around.
I've explained to you why I've stopped you. Okay, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't stop people that commit crimes in these areas. And we have young black males in this area that come from outside of Cambridgeshire that deal drugs. I'm not suggesting.
I wanted to say, if this is just a parody, a satire, and we've been duped, I want to apologize in advance. And I don't even know when this is from. It is really just more relevant because to me, it captures, whether it's satire or not, I have a feeling it's actually real. It captures a dynamic that for whatever reason, white people can't seem to understand. That this cop is only seeing it from his perspective. This is perfectly rational. It's not, what I'm doing is not racist. And then he gets very defensive. Like, I'm not a racist.
He's literally doing, look, maybe it is satire, 1% chance, 99% chance not. So I'm not trying to trivialize this, but I mean, this is David Brent dialogue.
Right.
He racially profiles the guy, is super transparent about it.
Yep.
Then does just straight, I mean, that's all I can think of. It's just straight up David Brent dialogue.
Yes. And I like how the other cop is like, sorry to interrupt. Can I have your ID, please? But the just the notion that the perspective that this cop has is only from, it's so narrow, and is not aware of the fact that, like, if you cannot do policing without stopping every black person you see. Now, surely this guy sees white people every day that he doesn't know. And even if it is the case that the vast majority of people who live in that town are white, like, you cannot use the fact that that's a person I don't recognize and is black as the mechanism in which to stop them. It's just, you cannot do that. And it is racist, and it is what it does to that person who's not the cop is really what the issue is here. It's not whether the cop can come up with some rationale that it makes more sense for me to stop black people.
It's not racist. It's just that all the black people are drug dealers. And I mean, I'm sorry. I can't even.
I'm not saying them all are black people. I'm not saying all the black people are drug dealers. I'm saying that drug dealers are black. And therefore, I've got to check all the black people to see which ones are the drug dealers or not.
But by the same token, I'm stopping. I mean, no one stops more white people than me.
Right. Of course. In this town full of white people. I stopped.
I love Invictus. Did you ever see that? Morgan Freeman as Nelson Mandela. He's my hero, really. Wrote an essay about him.
I think, what's that guy's name? Idris? What's his name? What's that? The actor's name? Idris?
Oh, Idris Elba, yeah.
Yeah, I think Idris should be Bond.
Yeah, why? Here's the real question. I pulled you over to say, why can't Idris Elba be James Bond?
Of course he can be.
That's what I want to do.
Of course, I'm not racist.
Cambridgeshire's...
I've been meaning to ask all of the black drug dealers, can Idris Elba be James Bond?
Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, it's wrong Cambridge.
Jesus Christ.
Unbelievable. But it is, I think it's really instructive. Like, I almost feel like you could take that video and just like, that's day one of a class of like, you know, people learning not to be racist.
Well, in Britain.
Learning annex class.
In Britain, here it could be like, you're violating my civil rights.
The cops.
Yeah. Why are you asking me? You're violating my civil rights.
Cambridgeshire is 90% white, so it's good that he's arrested more white or stopped more white people than black people.
But just barely. Calling from a 718 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Greg from New York. Thanks for taking my call.
Who's this?
Mr. Greg, New York City.
Greg from New York.
Hi,
sir.
Greg.
Is this real? Is this
How
the Greg?
is this Greg?
This is the Greg.
Oh,
Wow.
Greg. Well, long time no. hear
Greg,
from you,
I'm
Greg.
guessing that you have a solution that involves jetpacks and other
Yeah, jetpacks are cool, but
Shut up, Greg. I'm going to finish a bit, and then you can derail the show. Jetpacks and other non sequiturs. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So no preambles. I am calling in basically because Sam wants libertarians to call in, and I wanted to say as a left libertarian, thank you. The other day, you guys are basically welcome to the conversation that libertarians have been having about police and sort of distrust of the state, the violent arm of the state specifically. And I think at this point, the progressive left is joining sort of with the skepticism, you know, the NYPD being the seventh largest army in the world, and the fact that, you know, government officials have sort of told us not to wear masks and everybody that led to these shutdowns. That whole thing together results in their civil unrest as well. Yes, there's a police problem, and libertarians have been talking about it. But what I'm glad, and Jamie is a left libertarian, she said she wants to abolish the police. And I think very much so Noam Chomsky, who I talked to, is going to be on your show. He is a left libertarian, and he's very much skeptical as well of government power. So I just wanted to ask you the conversation of what do you feel in terms of why not ally with the libertarian, at least libertarian left, calling for this
because we
to be
hate
your
you.
ally.
You'll never be our ally.
But I mean, Greg, what does it mean to you to ally with them? Like, how would what are the mechanisms in which
you had on Radley Balco in I think 2011? He's a great. I think he identifies as a libertarian writer.
Yeah, we certainly did at the time.
You had him on. He wrote a great book on policing. I mean,
on militarization,
guys. When it comes to cops and drug war, I mean, we've been aligned for a while now.
Yeah. I don't feel like
I'm
allied with them. The idea of over policing and the militarization of the police is something I've been talking about for 15 years. But I sort of let that slide, Greg. But I'm curious as like, what is it that you're looking for here? You want me to say what? Left libertarians are good? What organization are we talking about? What?
Sure. Well, for starters, you know, don't make fun of them every time they call in. I mean, I know that's entertaining, but what I'm trying to say is like left libertarians
motion
have been more
denied.
critical of the police than the progressives. When, for example, Jamie says abolish the police,
the so-called progressives
are
actually
supporting the
regressive.
capitalist machine, right? Then that is something that you can take seriously because that's what libertarians have been talking
Greg.
about. Why have the apparatus of a policeman who doesn't know you, rather than a neighborhood watch or someone who does know you from when you were 10 years old? Why not have a more decentralized system, you know?
Greg, do you really think that the people that are on Twitter and the activists in the abolition movement are libertarians like you're talking about?
There are many forms of libertarians, and that's my point.
Yes.
Is why not agree on them with some things, but not other things?
Because they don't even remotely consider themselves a part of the libertarian that you come from. They don't draw
that. Greg, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to commandeer this conversation for a minute. I think we owe it to you to be transparent. You've called in literally hundreds of times. In contrast to what you might think based off of my obnoxious impressions, the truth is that behind the scenes for a long time, we've been saying, Sam, can we please formally align with the libertarians to end violent policing? And Sam says, and I directly quote, no, because I don't like them. And they don't understand light bulb regulation, so we can never work together. And that is the bottom line.
Yeah, Greg,
let me.
I don't like them.
Greg, hold on for 1 second.
It's difficult to convince
Greg,
a man of something when
Greg,
his own job depends on it.
Right.
Yeah.
But my job does not in any way depend upon forming a support group or not with the self-identified left libertarians, of whom I don't know who you're even talking about.
Yeah.
What is it that we're supposed to do? Well, I mean, I agree with Noam Chomsky that we should limit the power of police. Okay, are we done? Like, what else do we need to do? Do I need to buy you coffee?
I can tell you specific policy proposals. Why not have decentralized police, where again the police
decentralized police? What the hell does that mean?
In people's communities, right? Why have a state police?
Well, how do you defining communities?
We already actually.
I'm sorry.
Have that.
How are you defining communities? Like, we're going to have it neighborhood police?
Certainly, neighborhood. Certainly, when people know each other, like when, for example, the Jews, the religious Satmar Jews, violated the city ordinance, right? Who do they listen to? Their rabbis, right?
Wait a second,
their local community
Greg.
leaders.
This is why we can't
going
align.
to model. This is exactly why I don't ally with you people, because it's insanity. You're going to model policing based upon a sect of a religious sect that is living like they did 400 years ago, essentially, in terms of the consolidation of the community, maybe more. Maybe
and the Christians around this country, the Muslims, everybody has a community where they know each other, and they're not going to shoot you for
I mean, they actually, Greg, you actually should really read up on the atomization. No, look, let me not even use all that terminology. There's a book that came out in the 1990s called Bowling Alone by a Harvard sociologist, I think.
Robert Putnam, yes.
Yeah, I mean, people are not, even if you wanted to, and this poses a very, very dangerous implications because, as an example, I know some people who might fall inside the jurisdiction of some of these neighborhoods in Crown Heights and Williamsburg, and I don't think they want to be policed by local Hasidic authorities. but even besides that,
excuse me,
most Americans.
Could you please?
You Jewish?
Could you please
put on the facility?
I don't think I want Hell's Angels to.
Why am I looking at your knees?
Robert Putnam's book.
Why am I looking at your knees?
About the breakdown of American society.
Yes, right, exactly. So most American communities, even if you wanted to open up this very dangerous situation that you're talking about, are not even logistically there. I mean, there's a reason why you're pulling one of the most unique communities like there is almost no comparison other than maybe the Amish. This is amazing. I literally thought we could just say, you're right.
Let me ask you this,
demilitarize the police, but it
Greg,
always
have you
happens.
ever listened? Greg, let me ask you a question. Have you ever lived in in a small town?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I grew up around Nanuet, New York. It wasn't exact. It was close to a Jewish community.
Nanuet is the suburbs of New York.
Commuter. It's a commuter. But I'm saying, have you lived in a small town that is distant from a metropolis, where people have actually lived there for an extended period of time? You want to talk about corruption and central authority? It's just smaller. But I got news for you. The dynamic is the same. In fact, in some ways, it's worse because there isn't enough people around to push back. And so the corruption.
Well, right. Let me just address that real quick. Yes, of course, there's going to be problems in every society. And did we need the federal government to help end slavery and so on? Yes, we need larger structures, sure. What I'm trying to say is, the one question is, Philando Castile, Abner Luima, everybody, would they have been shot by the people that grew up with them and know them and are in law enforcement for their neighborhood watch? Or are they always being shot by the people who have absolutely no idea who they are and think they might have a gun and might kill them? That's my question.
Well, I mean, I don't know. If he had wings, would he be able to fly? Like what you're talking about, the idea that you have, the solution that first of all, we all need to stay in the community that we grew up in so that we can get fair policing, is absurd. But that is, if you are a Hasidic Jew, you do have the advantage of the fact that, like, I'm going to school, I'm going to yeshiva, elementary yeshiva. Stays is very cohesive and static. But the fact of the matter is that the rest of society is not like that.
But also, Greg, I mean,
you're not.
All I'm trying to say.
We want police to be democratically accountable.
To have a more radical solution of restructuring the police. I'm saying just listen to the Libertarian voice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Greg.
I disagree, but
Greg,
no, I'm going to disagree.
Maybe the police should be of the people in the community rather than a giant city that they don't know yet.
Here's what Greg's doing right now is that if we consider all abolitionists libertarians, then the population of black libertarians in America will go up by 900,000. These aren't libertarians, Greg. They're abolitionists.
Well, yeah, and this goes to a completely, like, the point of having democratic accountability and universal standards in polity is exactly that. Basically, small ethnic blocks or different geographies don't get to exclude the minority within. You got to just think through things a little bit, Greg. I mean, like, I can't even.
Well,
yeah,
Greg,
you're romanticizing a scenario.
You're throwing out ideas, and I think that's good. But you got to, I think, like, stay within the parameters of actually what is,
but you do agree it's important for the cop to know the person they're policing, perhaps.
Not necessarily.
I think that's helpful, but I think that's helpful.
Colorado, and also to say thank you very much to Jamie for beating the drum on abolition. Michael, thank you for having organizers on your show. Joshua Kahn Russell is amazing. And Sam, thank you for just being the fucking goat of lefty talk radio. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure.
In Colorado, we have a Senate bill. I'm excited about this. It's been spearheaded by the BLM and abolitionist groups in Colorado. This bill would end qualified immunity for law enforcement in Colorado, would ban chokeholds across the state, reduce the authorization for deadly force, create a permissible inference in court that if a body cam was turned off, that it was turned off in order to cover up a crime, and also create public databases, including demographic information of all use of force cases and all police stops across the state. It's an amazing bill. And I want to encourage anyone out there that is in Colorado, is a tourist to the state, or might be in the future, to please contact representatives in the Colorado legislature. There is a website that is maintained by the state with all of their phone numbers. It's leg.colorado.gov/legislators. Any representative on there, call them and make your voice known. The calls we've been making, our presence in the street has been making a difference, and we can win change. And thank you all for everything you do, for letting me talk. And I've never gone out and done stuff before. I've been too scared to. And I've been out this past week, and it's because of everything that's been happening and everything I've been learning from the Majority Report universe. And I want to say to all the people out there that are still inside, it's much scarier in your head than it is out in the streets. Even with the cops out there, go out there, make some friends. They need your body.
That's great. Great call. Thank you so much. I appreciate the call.
Thank you, Sam. One last thing. Worcester, Massachusetts. There's an amazing group there called Technocopia. I've been wanting to tell you about them for years because they're in Worcester. They were founded by punks, anarchists, socialists, people of the tech community.
I know these guys.
And they are, oh my God, one of their founders is my best friend from way back, Kevin Harrington. Great guy. If anyone out there wants to give some money to a COVID charity, they gave away last week $250,000 worth of PPE that they made themselves.
Wow.
To local hospitals and nursing homes that can't afford the stuff.
That's
so
amazing.
If anyone is looking for a COVID donation right now, I know everyone's putting their money out there, but that's still ongoing. If you got friends, family in New England, and you want to try to look out for the people that need it, the name of the organization is Technocopia, like cornucopia, but with tech at the front.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. I think I know one of the guys who was associated with that. God, I can't remember.
Yeah, Sammy, come on by. I'll have them give you the full tour. They would love to get some exposure.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate the phone call.
That's awesome.
Thank you all. Stay safe out there. Oh, and Greg.
Oh, sorry.
Oh man, he had a message for Greg.
You can't come on your first time like that with that and talk to Greg. It's just not
right. You got to build up. You got to build that up.
First of all,
we've known Greg for years.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't police the community that way.
Yeah, exactly. You got to know Greg from when he was younger.
That's
you
right.
Don't have to police him now. That's the only way to do it. It's the only way. In that case, when you know him that long, you're allowed to abuse him.
Exactly.
No, you've earned it. You've earned it.
No one else is able
to call, and Michael.
I want to say something about.
Look, Brendan does a better Peter Thiel than I do, but he doesn't jump in because he doesn't have the years of the job.
No, you can't. Here's the thing about those reforms that they're talking about in Colorado: necessary, insufficient, but my attitude is this: we need to bank this stuff as soon as possible, because in 2 weeks from now, when the alien invaders land. And we are faced with, whatever it is, their ray guns that are gonna, it's gonna change the complete dynamic of everything that's going on in our politics. We need to bank this ASAP so that we get closer to the point. Look, the fact is that the ineffectiveness of the reforms that came out of the Obama administration and the DOJ, some of the stuff was helpful. Some of it was tried. Minneapolis was the home of like one of the key places of these experiments, and they failed. And that's why you've got, I think, the Minneapolis City Council going like, we're not going to try these other reforms because we did, and it's not working. And on some level, just from a political standpoint, sometimes you got to cycle through these things. And you got to bank this stuff when you have the opportunity so you can build on it for the future. I mean, I think people should keep pushing for more, but bank it as you go. And so, be careful of necessary but insufficient is really the way to look at this stuff, rather than, because there is going to be an attempt by lawmakers to get out ahead of this, to basically, co-opt some of the energy with reforms that are not going to be substantial enough to ultimately do the job. You bank those, but you maintain the energy and push through it. And that's what's got to happen during, will it all happen this round, go through? I don't know. But I think that, it's building, and you seize the opportunity as it exists in that moment, it seems to me. This is interesting. I'm curious about this. I feel like it's like a Rorschach test, because I know people are making fun of this, but I think there's maybe it's just, let's play this clip. This is Allison Camrata with a woman named Lisa Bender. And I guess she is a Minneapolis council woman.
Oh, yeah, I do have a critique of this.
And who, and like we say, they are ostensibly going to be cutting the police force. And it's unclear to me exactly what they're proposing to do, but it is along the lines of defunding. I don't know how dramatic or whatnot, but they're also, and I said this the other day when we were talking to Alex Vitale, I'm a little bit cynical about anything that's going to take a year-long worth look at it, because by that point, this is going to be after the aliens have landed and Oprah is president and whatever, other insanity is awaiting us. But nevertheless, Here she is on CNN. I'm curious, Michael, what you think about this.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality where calling the police may mean more harm is done.
What's your take on that?
So I have a messaging and then substantive concern. And actually there's a fuller clip where I think she actually sort of moves back and tries to fill out what she's saying. So I think what she's doing is great, and this isn't an attack on her. But I think, one, the messaging is like defund is still, I think that's like a 16, 17% poll number position. And most poll numbers definitely indicate across the board that there is a broad acknowledgement, increasing acknowledgement, including finally among white people, that changes need to happen, but definitely not calls for cuts or these other more radical systemic things. So I think when you get the one question that you're going to get, and I want to really emphasize, like, this is the normie question. And I've heard this question even in the last couple of weeks from people from every different racial background that I talk to about this stuff. Police are racist, police are discriminatory, abusive, absolutely. Wait a second, you want to get rid of them? You want to totally defund them? What happens when somebody knocks in the middle of the night? That is that's not just like a suburban whitey world question.
Sure,
that is a question everybody has. So I think the messaging is flawed. Then the deeper thing, and the way I'd like to reframe it, and what I think was the most powerful expression of this actually was that incredible Tucker video, where they showed Tucker doing that racist fear-mongering thing about hordes of young men lawlessly rampaging on the streets. And they cut and they showed police lawlessly rampaging on the streets. And that, to me, is the point, that democracy and security are not privileges. They have to be insured to absolutely everybody if we're going to have anything that can be called a democracy. So it's not a question of, because look, I think especially in an age of austerity and how these things get reshifted, I think the neoliberal impulse is very happy. Like, maybe that is a privilege. And maybe that's a privilege that you buy a private contractor for without police. The point is that everybody should have safety and security, and everybody should know that in that extreme situation where they have to make that call, they're not going to end up getting abused or shot or which absolutely can happen. And you can test this out. Ask anybody from different racial backgrounds, and I will say also to some extent class backgrounds, that they call a cop when they're in trouble, and that will illustrate the point. But I would not frame it as a privilege. It's a right that needs to be delivered for all, and that's why we need to make these changes.
And what I think what she was trying to argue was that we have a disparity in that experience, and she's
100% right about that. I'm just saying, move the goal over to the fully fleshed out point.
Yes, I agree, and I think like that Ghetto Side, that Jill Lavoie book, in my understanding, sort of like discusses that dynamic, that and when we were talking about this with Vitaly, and I don't want to spend too much time on, sort of tissing the messaging, because frankly, there's been more that is progress that's been made in the past 2 weeks than, as far as I can tell, in the past 10 years.
Definitely.
But the word reinvestment or divest and reinvest is really a more accurate description, I think, of what the sort of the center of that proposal is. And to say if she says in that instance, yes, many people don't experience the police in the way that you're talking about, Allison. You and I might, but there's a lot of other people who don't. And this whole idea is that will be they will serve and protect.
Everybody will have that security. Exactly. Everybody will have that. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is that, again, it's anecdotal, but I remember talking to a former neighbor of mine, a black man. just the endless stories of the most, I mean, been abused by police since he's a kid. Despicable. I can't even, and then on the other hand, in addition to that, then it would be like, it would pivot onto another topic and you'd be like, yeah, and where the hell are they for XYZ actual thing that they need to be here for?
Exactly. Exactly. There are instances where you want someone to come and help you.
Right.
And that should be available to everyone in the exact same way.
Right.
And that's why it has to be, obviously, your rabbi. Oh,
my God. It made me lightheaded. Jesus Christ.
Call from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Josh from Chicago. How are you, Josh?
Good. I got those masks, by the way. I'm enjoying wearing them.
Oh, good.
So, the other day, I talked with one of the national reps for my union and talked with them about putting out a statement. I know WGA and the flight attendants union have put out statements, and I believe a labor council in Seattle is actually voting on disaffiliating the cop unions from their local or disaffiliating their cop union, but putting out a statement basically calling on AFL-CIO to disaffiliate themselves from cop unions, because I think there's a larger problem. I mean, I completely support defunding the police. I think it's absolutely necessary. But the other problem is that a lot of these cop unions endorse DAs and judges. And if you look at I look at the Jason Van Dyke case, for example, he shot Laquan McDonald, 16 times and got charged with second-degree murder and only got 6. I think he's out right now. I think he got 6 years in jail. If you look at the judge in the Texas case, she was endorsed by the police union, and the woman who killed Botham Jean got 10 years and a hug. It was really disgraceful. And I would just encourage people, if they are in the unions, write to your local union head, because this is an action that people should be taking right now, especially with organized labor. I feel like
I gotta say that, and I understand that problem. I personally am not. I'm not as clear that is a great solution, because on some level you're starting to create a race to the bottom with that in terms of unionization. I mean, I think the idea of maybe what we need to do is when it comes to shootings or prosecutions, you bring in independent bodies to do this. I don't know what that looks like, but I understand the dynamic of the problem of the political power of police in a community is too strong. I don't know if that's necessarily just a function of the union, to be honest with you, because I think after defunding, after basically stripping or narrowing their functions in society, it seems to me, I think you're going to have a change in the power dynamic. So personally, obviously,
let's say if you go, I'm sorry.
Well, I think, obviously, unions, have as much right to associate themselves with other unions as anybody else does. But I am
probably what they do.
Huh?
I would say if you push through, but as part of this type of agenda, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Sam's alluding to. I mean, you're going to actually, if you make the police no longer a paramilitary threat to the well-being of vast parts of the overall community, they're going to be, their power is going to lessen. They're going to need more. They're going to need union protection like any other worker.
I just think that you're not going to get, I'm not convinced that decertification from a broader union is really going to achieve what you're talking about. And I think the downsides could be greater than we anticipate. I would like to see them as a, start with the budgets. and then also with accountability reforms that you can sidestep the dynamic that they have locally. Because I just don't think that, like, look, whether they're a union that can actually like sort of provide material support in terms of money or not, they're still going to have some type of organization. They're still going to have that political power. I think there are examples of being able to get cities to negotiate with unions in a way that doesn't allow them to hide, let's say, police disciplinary records, et cetera, where you could have independent bodies that create more political pressure on a DA to hold them accountable in other ways. I just think that there's other ways to skin that cat that maybe save the cat. I don't, but
yeah, possibly.
I don't know.
I
need to look into it more.
At least, like, AFL should have, like, there should be guidelines for these police unions that, because we know what they do, and then there should be the consequence of maybe expelling, because a lot of these police unions do like hide, like they basically wash away like a lot of these cops who commit crimes, and it's fucking horrible, and the power that these institutions have over elected officials. I mean, I'm all for.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem, Josh. Like the talk that you're just saying right now, Grover Norquist could say to me.
Yeah, that is.
And he could be saying it about sanitation
statement
workers.
For every
could be saying about teachers. I'm worried about going down that road, and I think there are other mechanisms to deal with the problems, the vast majority of the problems that you're talking about.
I would be really interested to see, and I don't know. I mean, we're far from it because, like the cop unions in New York are run by the most demented, insane reactionaries. There's no question about that. But if you start if there starts to become enough actual contextual political pressure on budgets and on regulation and all these areas, you might see inside the union a push of people being like, wait a second, like we need to be here for benefits and salaries. We cannot be the focal point for justifying murder and abuse across the country. But I guess I have the same, it's a very complicated topic, and obviously
it's a tough bargain.
It's tough, but I have a certain, I frankly have an allergy, honestly, just even on a political level. Like I also, if a firefighters and electricians union came forward and said, we might want to dissociate from the cops, that would register much differently than the writers union. Like, I don't like the optics of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we should mention that the Buffalo police that applauded those guys were affiliated with the AFL-CIO.
Well,
I appreciate the call, Josh.
That's true.
I did write a union script about cops. It's called Beat Cops. Yeah, there you go. We got time for one more call. How good is that Meghan McCain clip? Not that great, right?
Nice. There's the clip.
Forget Meghan McCain. Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yeah, it is you.
Hey, this is Sandina from New York.
Sandina from New York. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking the call. Appreciate it, Sam. I just wanted to bring your attention, if you don't mind, to New York's 12th congressional district.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really competitive district. I'm partial to Lauren Ashcraft. I know that she's been on TMBS, if I'm not mistaken. She's got great endorsements, got a great platform, one of them being our beloved Shahid Buttar. And but I know there are a couple other progressives, or at least there's one other progressive in the group, in Pete Harrison. That being said, I think the strategy is to get rid of Carol.
This is Maloney's district. This is Maloney's
I
district.
beg your pardon?
Carolyn Maloney's district, or I should say she's representing it. And I think we're going to have Lauren Ashcraft on Ring of Fire soon. I think
cool.
So.
I'd also, can I just really quick shout out Isaiah James? He's a great candidate. Go.
Okay, well, I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether this is if there's a strategy here. You know, if because I know Suraj Patel ran in 2018. He had a pretty good showing, all things considered, and you know, now running for a second time, I think he probably has maybe a slight advantage over the other ones. I'm just curious if it's time to vote with strategy or with heart.
By strategy, you mean like have some type of consolidation?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I think that's helpful. Like in the race, in Engel's race, you had Adnan. I can't remember his last name now, but he dropped out basically because Jamal Bowman had gotten enough of like the sort of left institutional support. And I interviewed both those guys. They were both great candidates, but I think that it's good that Adnan, you know, dropped out. I mean, I think on one level, I don't know how you convince, certainly from our perspective, like I don't know how you convince one person to drop out or another. I think on some level they've got to look at the situation and say, you know, what's more important, my ambitions or the, you know, actual, you know, change there. I think we just also saw that like in New York 17th, and I can't remember exactly who it was that dropped out, but Mondaire Jones, who's another guy who I had interviewed very early, actually. And I think it was, I know one of his opponents dropped out, and I think Sanders just endorsed Mondaire Jones as well. And he was around 12% or something like 13%. And I think, but he had the highest sort of ceiling to go to. So I think that's a very, look, I think it's an important thing to happen, but it's not something that I don't know how voters, you know, it's something that the candidates have to do.
Sure. Understood. Okay. Well, I really appreciate your input. Thanks for taking my call, and really appreciate all that y'all do.
All right. Appreciate the call. All right. Let's take one more phone call, then we'll get out of here. Call from a 215 area code. 215.
Mindy, how are you?
Mindy.
Sam.
Mindy.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Mindy.
I'm not gone. I'm just was too depressed to call anybody.
Well, to be honest with you, I've been finding all this pretty depressing as well. But you know, I know
I've been watching you be depressed, and I've been commiserating with you, which is nice.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but you look good. You look well. You look a little, you know, Serpico. You look good.
I get Serpico quite a bit. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say porn star, but you know, I didn't.
I get that too. That's why we play that music at the beginning of the show. Right.
My husband wants to know if you're dying. My husband cuts hair for a living, so he wants to know if you were dyeing your mustache. But
I am not dyeing my mustache. No. Why would I dye my mustache as opposed to anything else? But yes, I get that too.
Okay, wait. Real quick story. Just real quick. Two real quick stories. My husband walked in the room 15 years ago and looked at the TV and said, "That Joe Kearns is a fucking asshole," and walked out of the room like 15 years ago. And then last week you talked about Joe Kearns, and my husband was in the room for the first time he ever heard your show and said, "That guy is such a fucking asshole. I know why you like Sam, because Joe Kearns is an asshole, and he doesn't like Joe Kearns either." So now my husband wants to hear you every day on TV while he's home because he can't open up a shop. So you have a new list.
Wait a second. Your husband never heard the show until like a week ago?
Well, he worked. No, he worked. He cuts hair for a living. So he has a shop, a haircut shop. So he never's home to hear your show. Yeah, he cuts hair for a living.
Well, why doesn't he play it at the shop?
Because he does a lot of Republicans, because he's in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, and he does mix, and he can't play
Even better.
Show. He has
Even
to
better.
Play either.
Even better.
Try to hurt the man's business.
Even better.
He can't play your show. He can't play your show. Okay, so he heard your show, and he likes you. He's a huge fan. He just really likes you. He loves the whole show. He loves Jamie and Michael, and he's on to all of you. He's just really into it. Okay. He likes all of you. So now it's a big thing. He doesn't want to go back to work because he listens to your show now. Well, that's not the reason. He's sitting here right
Okay.
So I just wanted to tell you I have a new fan in my husband.
All right, I appreciate that. And Joe Kearns, this is the CNBC guy,
what?
right? The CNBC guy.
What?
Yeah.
The
he's
Joe
horrible.
Kearns, the
horrible.
asshole who brought his daughter on 15 years ago and says she's going to be the new face of CNBC. Some like 10-year-old.
Oh, that's
all right. So that was that. All right. The real story why I called you is I went to vote last week, and I live in the sleepy Republican town, kind of like mixed, kind of like 40-60, something like that. So I went to vote, and there's never anybody there to vote. But this time, they told me the voting machines were broken, and I had to use the paper ballot. So they had to walk me through the paper ballot thing, and there was nobody there, so there was no line. It took like 15 minutes. And then the woman has to walk you to the machine to input all the information. And I really couldn't see how she was inputting it because she was like moving fast. So I said to her, how many people are Republicans and how many people are Democrats coming in here? And she goes, oh, this is very Republican. Everybody coming in today is Republican. And I said, you've got to be a fucking asshole to vote Republican for Trump. I mean, even Republicans have to know he's not right. And she said, well, I said, anybody that votes for Trump has to be a fucking asshole. And she said, well, I guess I'm a fucking asshole. But the point was, and then she told me I was crazy. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think they're trying to rig the machines here. I mean, this was the first time in 30 years ever where I had trouble voting. So they said the machines were broken in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. What do you say about that?
Well, I mean, it would be weird for them to rig it during the primary.
I don't know.
I mean, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
Wouldn't it be weird to rig it during the primary? Because now you're alerted to it, and now you can push back. I mean, if there was a concerted effort to rig it during the primary, I think that it would be smarter for them to just. Maybe they're just trying it out. Let's see what the tolerance is. But they also wouldn't be spending but they wouldn't be doing it in a Republican district either.
Well, it's really mixed. It's going kind of blue. It's kind of purple. I mean, it goes back and forth. It's a very weird area where I live.
Mindy, this is what you should do: is you should contact your state senator. Unless they're a Republican, but you should contact a state.
No, we have who's our senators, Kat? We have Toomey and
No, not your federal senator, your state senator. But you should call the county board of elections or whatever and ask them about it.
Casey.
But don't.
I will if I can get through. We're also having other problems in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you know, but they're trying to veto. They're trying to overturn Walsh, who's a Democrat. Our governor is a Democrat and trying to get everybody back to work.
Well,
and they keep fighting with Walsh, and now he's going to have to go to the Supreme Court. And this is another thing that everybody has to know: they have to vote down ballot in everything because our Senate flipped. Our state Senate flipped to Democrat, I believe. Supreme Court flipped to Democrat, and the down ballot is really important in a purple state like mine.
Yes, you're still heavily you're still heavily gerrymandered on the state rep level. For some reason, the lawsuit was just for Congress. I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. But maybe we need to hear from Mike from PA if you still call in.
Yeah, maybe Mike from PA will call. And then very last thing I want to say about the cops here. I'm never comfortable with the cops here. I live in a higher end, like a upper middle area, and the cops don't get paid a lot, and the cops don't live in our area, and they're never nice to us. Like they're not. If you're not a white 40-year-old male, they're not mean. Yeah, they're nice to my house. They're really mean, the cops here. So the people. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm ever intimidated by them, but I'm not comfortable with the cops here. And I can when my kids were little, I'm don't fuck around here because the cops are nasty. And that's always been a thing. So I can just imagine, living in an area where the cops don't live here. So it's just really intimidating.
Well, needs to be Mindy, someone you grew up with.
Yeah, exactly. You need your rabbi to do it. Mindy, really appreciate the call. Glad your husband's on board, and tell him. To
Why can't another hairdresser be the cop for your husband?
In the
they
barber
both cut hair.
He's saying play the show in the haircut shop, as you call it. That's I appreciate the call, Mindy.
No, my husband owns a barber shop, so he's got he does like a real mix of people.
No, I know what a barber shop is.
Sam, in other words, it's a barber shop.
I know what a barber shop
So there's a lot of different kinds of people that come into it.
No,
It's
I know,
a place,
I know
it's a place where mainly men get their hair.
I appreciate the call, Mindy.
You might be able to get your mustache.
Have a great day.
Bye. You too.
Love you guys. Miss you.
Love you. Bye. You might be able
she called it a haircut shop first.
Why shouldn't there be a police from the haircut shop who police the other haircut shops? That way they know each other.
This is what you do. Mindy's husband, who's still listening. Well, I know you're still listening. You put it on in the haircut shop, as your wife calls it, who apparently doesn't realize that there's another word for it, like barbershop or hair salon. You put it on, and when your clients listen to it, you say, I just listened to this because I love to hate it. Listen to this guy. And then you slowly, that idea actually doesn't sound too unreasonable, but the other stuff, right? That's what you do. That's you say like, I like it just because sometimes the guy's cranky or something. Sometimes you can hear his kids yelling in the background. That makes me laugh. Folks, I'm afraid that's it for the show. Check out TMBS. They posted that show last night. Next week is, what's this guy's name again? Noam what?
Noam Chomsky.
He's a famous libertarian.
He's a well-known libertarian who he slowly and painstakingly explains why people should only police each other if they've known each other before puberty.
I can't wait.
That's what he's mainly known for.
Jetpacks.
Yes.
All right, folks. Michael will be on tomorrow. We will see you. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.